Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll get underway, and I'm going to turn it over to Billy for some opening remarks.
Yeah. Well, so we're at the close, obviously, of the 2022 season, but, it's kind of a time for reflection and also to, show some appreciation and thanks for everybody in the organization. So there's a lot of people to recognize, to kind of make this whole production go on. So everybody inside of baseball operations, whether we're talking about our coaching staff, our performance group, our major league operations, our scouting department, player development department, analytics department, baseball systems department. It takes an army to kind of put on our show for 185, 200 days. But also everybody else inside the organization, the business operations, media relations group, the ticketing departments, the marketing departments. Everybody here is kind of serving a cause, to put something on the field that people can be proud of, and we are proud of how this team played this year. Also, you got to thank the players. They're the performers. They're who everybody comes. They're who everybody comes to see. They're who we follow. They're who, people put up on their walls in their bedrooms, if that's still a thing. Was when I was a kid. But, they're who we all come to see. And they gave everything they had, night in, night out. And I'm really proud of how they showed every single day and the professionalism they came with, and how they approached their job. Obviously, thanking the writers. You guys put up with a lot. You live pretty uncomfortable lives. You travel all over the country, and you're the conduit. You're the way that our fans get to look inside this organization and see us. And so, what you guys do shouldn't go unrecognized. And then, most importantly, the fans. They're the ones that drive us. They're the ones that fuel us. They're the ones that, really push us to be great, and inspire us. So they're the greatest. I really appreciate being around them, spring training, throughout the season, and as we kind of reflect back on this last year, now 11 months for me, and would you follow 3 weeks behind me? About 3 weeks, and then brought this guy on board, and looking back on that, really proud of some of the things that we accomplished. Whether it was signing a flurry of players right before the lockout, and we know who they are. Max and Starling and Mark and Eduardo. Then going into a period where we were going to hire a manager. Ultimately landed on Buck, which I'm very thankful for. We have a lot of history, and I guess maybe through the year found out we were a little bit more alike than maybe we even thought, even before that. So that was a good thing. Then we built a coaching staff. How was that interview process? Went through a lot of interviews. But then, brought in a coaching staff, built that out. Lockout ends, execute another trade for Chris, sign Adam Ottavino, who was a really important piece in our bullpen this year. And then, boom, we're off and running and playing some really exciting baseball, inspiring a lot of people. It's inspiring us, but I was really, really proud of how this team fought, the resiliency they showed all year long. Winning 101 games doesn't happen very often. I think it's 2 times for me being connected with a team that won 100. And how many with you? 2? 2 for Buck. So it doesn't happen. Recognize it. It was pretty special. While we fell short of what our ultimate goal was, we can still look back and feel really good about the accomplishments of the season. Kind of step one in a blueprint to drive this organization to a place where we can get sustainability, where we can be a contending team year in and year out. That's what builds culture. That's what builds expectations. And that's what we're going to, do here in the long term. But we have to take a long-term view to do that. As far as, where we go now, Steve's continued to say, I'll support, this cause financially. And we can use some money to bridge ultimately where we want to take this place, which again is to that sustainability where we're winning year in and year out. So, as we sit here today, there's going to be a lot of work to do this wintertime. Happy to share an agenda if anybody wants to talk about that, but I'm not going to get into specifics. But yeah, there's some work to do, and we have to just continue this build and continue this climb, and make sure we just do everything in service of that blueprint.
Billy, thank you. We will now take questions for Billy and or Buck. Steve, we'll start with you.
So, this is for both of you, actually. But when you look at this season and the blueprint for just how you want to put a team together, do you say what we did was pretty much correct? We won 101 games, and the playoffs are just a crapshoot in some regard. Or do you look at it and say what happened down the stretch you feel like some deficiencies were exposed that you want to bolster heading into this offseason?
I think I haven't really, taken too close of a look at the numbers, but I think we maybe led an on-base percentage, which is pretty darn correlated to run scoring. I think we were maybe in the top 5 in scoring runs, but we did build the team to be able to, pitch in the postseason. We headlined it with 2 guys that are going to end up in the Hall of Fame. Ultimately we fell short at the very end. And there's a variety of things that kind of go into that. But if you tell me that we can design a team year in and year out that's going to win that many games or close to that many games, because like I said, we've, between us, in 65, 70 years in professional baseball, it's 4 times it's happened between us. So, that's why, I kind of refer to it as being special or having a special season. But if you tell me we can design a team that's going to lead an on-base percentage, score in the top 5 in runs, and we're going to have 2 Hall of Famers at the front end of our rotation, I think that's a pretty good recipe. We're dealing in, human performance, right? It's a probabilistic world. It doesn't come with guarantees. But I did like the position that our club was in.
Tony, go to you right behind.
Recognizing that you're trying to build something sustainable, as you've said a couple times now, it's rare to win 100 games or to have a team capable of that. Given that, do you regret in any way not perhaps doing more at the trade deadline to supplement that?
Yeah, no regrets. Had a process, had a good group of people in the room, good group of people that we were consulting with, had the tools that we needed to have, made the acquisitions that we made. I think, I think from Vogelbach's perspective, it was pretty good. I don't know. I'd be curious if you can point out somebody that out hit him that was traded, or how many you could, if you could, or the guys that weren't traded if they out hit him from that point forward. So, and we did it without robbing the future in a significant way. You make trades. It hurts. Any trade hurts, right? You want to keep as much of your talent as possible, and that's kind of why Steve, has said what he's going to, or has said what he has said, which is, we'll use the, some financial strength to keep us out of that position so that we can build something long term. So no regrets. Went about it with a process, and we're always looking to get better. We're always going to look to improve our processes, right? How do we take the inputs of a forecast on, player performance, which is variable, and how do we try to, get ourselves to a place where we feel comfortable with the acquisition. So we were at that time, and you evaluate it right at that time. You don't result it, because I think if you end up using results to guide in a probabilistic world, I think you're going to end up chasing, bias or recent events to try to shape that narrative, and I don't think that's better for the long-term view.
And just looking forward, how do you attack now an off season with so many players, but also so many of your prominent players can become free agents?
Lots of dialogue with their representation, but we look at what the marketplace is, what exists in the trade market. There could be opportunities there, and we want to remain opportunistic and look into the free agent market. I'll tell you though that I think building sustainability is not going to come via free agency. I think it's going to come internally. There's a couple franchises out there that are kind of the model for that right now, and that's where we strive to be. But it's going to take some time to build to that. It didn't happen overnight. Nothing happens by accident.
Disha?
Just one for Billy and one for Buck, if I can. The first was jumping off Tony's question. Do you think you hurt or squandered your World Series chances this year by prioritizing that long-term flexibility that you've been talking about?
I don't, because it's hard to focus, or it's hard to pinpoint what would have been better, or identify that. Again, you're dealing in a really short sample, so no, I don't have any regrets on it, and we improved our run scoring from that moment that we acquired Daniel and moved forward. Our runs per game was higher. Ultimately just in sequencing and how things kind of play out, it didn't fall our way at the end. That's kind of how it all played itself out.
And for Buck, what did or didn't you like about the way the team played down the stretch?
We didn't win enough games. I mean, that's the simple thing, but the effort was always there. They were a group that was very easy to trust and will be again. It's like I was telling somebody the other day, it might have been my wife, that you look at the four, really five, I think sometimes we kind of go by the signing of Ottavino. I think out of 250 or whatever relievers, he finished like 17th. Pretty remarkable. So I conclude him on a lot of the things that we did and that the front office did. So, but you want all four of those. Thank goodness they have multi-year contracts. When I look back, I go, that's unusual. When you get done, and I'm glad that all four of those guys you signed are coming back again. So I don't think I think the team they're frustrated, and rightfully so. And it's cruel to see a group that have put so much in the season, but so have the fans, and so have everybody else. To get to this point, it was frustrating for everybody, but I think it drives you. It drives you in the off season. Some of you have been in my office. That board says February now. That's the next time where I'm on, so to speak. Obviously I've got a lot of confidence, Billy and his group, and by evidence of what's going on already. I mean, I look at where we were a year ago on this date. It's pretty impressive, I think, what ownership and the front office have done, and I think our fans should take great confidence in that, because I know one thing, we'll be grinding every second of the way. It started about 2 or 3 hours after it was over, quite frankly, because you've got to move on, because this baseball world flies in the off season. So I don't know if I answered your question, did it? Close enough?
On the topic of the offense, you highlighted the OBP. I was wondering what you thought of how the offense looked overall this year, and what you hope it looks like next year.
Well, I guess watching our hitters, like if we just step back from numbers for a second and just watch us play a baseball game and recollect on, a number of really cool comebacks that happened over the course of the year, or situations where we were maybe facing an ace caliber pitcher and grinding that individual and looking up at the end of the second or the third inning and going, this guy ain't getting out of 5 if this keeps up. That's a good feeling, right? But even if you don't win that game, and it's an early part of the series, we're going to wear you down. That's a recipe that I've kind of been used to in my career trajectory, and being part of teams that did that. I felt really good, and I felt really good about 1 through 9 being able to kind of link those hitters together and link grind out bats, and kind of everybody here counts, and everybody here has a role, and the offense really took a hold of that and really ran with that and demonstrated it, because I can point out at any single hitter a game where they contributed the most to our win probability. Not to get mathy, but at bats that were big and at bats that turned the game in our favor, and that was the mark of a good team. So I really like how that offense contributed. Now we're going to move into an environment where the rules are changing a little bit. And so what does that do? It's going to change some of the forecasts. And so how we kind of predict how, the hitters are going to perform and the pitchers are going to perform and the fielders are going to perform. And so there's some things that we have to consider moving forward.
Do you hope to have a lineup in 2023 that hits more home runs?
If it's in the cards and it can happen, that's one way to do it. But still honoring getting on base is an important aspect. But if somebody presents themselves and that is there's enough daylight on that acquisition that we can pull it down, I have to be open to that. I'm a fan of on base percentage. I'm a fan of OPS, and in kind of simple terms, there's more granular ways to look at that. And process-oriented ways to look at that result. But I think if you just sorted teams by on-base percentage or sorted teams by OPS, you'd probably look at teams that you would want to be a part of.
Laura.
You had said that you built this team to be able to pitch in the postseason. That was kind of the central focus. Given some of the variables that come with that, especially the ones that we saw in the wild card, is that a philosophy that you think you're going to maintain next year?
I still think we're gonna, see big pitching performances in, this postseason. What these teams are gonna, roll out there till the end. And when you get pitching, and it's on its, it's the best version of itself. And we saw it this year, throughout a number of games where we won some games 2-1 because of who we put on that mound, and that's. That's a recognition of the players, and also recognition of the coaching behind it. So I think that's a really good recipe for success, and success in meaningful games and postseason games is having somebody on that mound that can carve up an opposing lineup.
And Buck, Billy seems largely pleased with how the season went, regardless of the ending. Do you share that sentiment?
Well, believe me, Billy and I don't take it. You want to be the last team standing. It's selfish. You're jealous, envious. Don't confuse. We're trying to keep a grip on reality, but turn the page and get on to the things that we're responsible for in the off season. Because, like I said, the baseball world flies, and I know I have the utmost confidence we'll be cutting edge and be ahead of the curve and be where we should be on things. So, it'd be very easy to say, well, we weren't the last team standing. There's some great moments just that I'll take back, the humanistic things that nobody saw behind the scenes. And that's what really tugs at your heart after a season like that. Because, if it was fair, we'd still be playing. But there's other teams that have good people and have good. And I told the guys in the season, I don't think I've ever been around a group of people that were as good human beings and as good of players. That combo doesn't always go together. And guys that you would, if you were in college or high school or something, you'd probably hang out with, but you also have respect for what they accomplish and how hard it is to do what they do, and with all the expectations that they created in a lot of ways. If you'd have left spring training last year and asked everybody to raise their hand that you're going to win 100, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'd rather win 92 and be the last team standing. So there's different parts of the season. The spring you got to accomplish things. Regular season you got to accomplish things. We didn't get the last part right, but I guarantee you we're going to be pretty hard self-evaluators, and we'll try to continue to surround ourselves with people that share that feeling. Because the Mets are very precious to our fans, and they are to us too.
Brad.
Buck, looking back at the Marte injury, what do you think the cumulative effect it had on the offense, especially having to shuffle with him being so consistent in the 2-hole?
Well, one of the things that we stressed the whole year from the day we were in the spring is no excuses. Play better. Okay, I can tell you this guy was out. I can run down names. Nobody wants to hear it. So Is he a good player? Do we miss him? Of course. But, you know, we have been able to overcome some of those things when people went down for a while. That's why guys like Francisco and Pete were so key, because they were able to post up. And we didn't, but I just, that's who we've tried to be, and not let that, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, which, you know, we have a lot of that in sports where, okay, this wide receiver's not playing, this guard's not playing, they can't win. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So we're going to continue to have that approach. It's what if. If it's from our system, somebody comes up, if it's the fourth outfielder or the utility infielder, that's what they're there for. And they also get the opportunity. So, yeah, that's obvious. He's a really good player, and we didn't have him, but not once was that brought up in a meeting or in the clubhouse. Our guys knew that was supposed to be our MO.
And then in Alvarez, Beatty, Vientos, those are three well-regarded prospects you brought up late in the season. How do they factor into your plans for next season and what you might do in the offseason?
I think it was a good experience for all three of those guys. You know, some of it was born out of necessity because of some circumstances that happened with our, 26 or 28 player roster at that moment in time. But I think I know there's some takeaways, for them and as well as for us. I'm very excited that they're here. I think they're going to be a big part of our future, and look forward to seeing them in spring training and watching them compete for jobs.
Two more, Tim.
Along those lines, with the rotation potentially having up to 4 free agents, the bullpen similarly having a ton of free agents, what is the challenge of building a pitching staff, not from scratch, but kind of close to it potentially?
You're gonna kind of test the test what you have internally. We saw McGill and Peterson take some steps forward, and some of the younger relievers come onto the scene. Probably going to lend itself to more runway for that group, and then continue to look into free agency and the trade market to supplement that. I think it's pretty safe to say we're going to have to hit the market to fill that out, because it can't be filled out entirely from internal candidates. So it's going to be a big point of focus.
Last one, Steve.
Billy, it's a two-parter. With the pitching staff, really since DeGrom said in spring training that he was going to opt out, there have been rumors swirling about what he wanted to do and what would end up happening. Without saying what those conversations were, have you had any conversations with him or his representation where you have an idea of what he's looking for?
Well, I wouldn't go too far down the tracks on what I'd talk about there, but I did have some time one-on-one with Jake Sunday night late. That might even been Monday morning by then, technically, but yeah, we talked one-on-one. He knows how we feel. I know how he feels. It's a good conversation, and so there's we had a good amount of dialogue, he and I, over the course of this season, and I think we have a sense of what makes maybe the other one tick, and so I think it's things are positive and the relationship's positive, and we'll see where it ultimately goes. But he knows how we feel.
Billy and Buck, thank you both very much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and I'm sure we will be in touch as we head through the offseason.